Hi everyone, my name is Prukalpa. I'm one of the founders of Atlan, and I'm joined here by Oliver, who leads data platforms at Fox. I was going to start by telling you a little bit about Atlan. At Atlan, we are the leading data and AI governance platform powering some amazing customers, Fox being one of them. But instead of telling you about all the cool things that Atlan does, I thought I would actually start with a little bit of a story from the first Data and AI Summit that I spoke at, which was about, I'd say, 4 years ago. And it was right off this blog post that I had written at the time about third generation data catalogs. And I like to think of it as in the last 5 years, we've had 3 eras of metadata management. So with that blog post, we talked about how data catalogs should not be this static repository where someone goes, logs in and searches for things. It should be something that lives and breathes in the places that people are already. So we said, hey, if you're in Slack and someone asks this question around annual recurring revenue, it should be like there should be a bot right there that answers that question. Or if you're in a BI tool and you say, can I trust this number? You should get that answer right then and there. 2 years ago, Oliver and I spoke at a conference, and that was right off a post that we'd written about this concept of active metadata and active metadata platforms. And that was when we realized that data catalogs had started as this kind of one use case for metadata. But as metadata became more and more mainstream, we started realizing that there were all these different use cases that we could power, like governance and end-to-end lineage and so on. And that, I think, was the second era of our evolution as an industry. And I believe we're today at the third evolution of the industry, which is we're all trying to figure out how to get ready for AI.
That's right.
And the reason I thought Oliver's story is so interesting, we were laughing about this yesterday, because we've, I think, presented at 3 conferences through this phases, and we talked about how the slides changed. And it was an evolution of these 3 eras. And I thought, he would be one of the best people to talk about. They've always been more forward-thinking than the ecosystem. And I'd love for him to share the journey that they've been on and some of the questions and thoughts that they have as they think about getting ready for the future.
Yeah.
So
Excited.
over to you with that,
so
Oliver.
much, Prukalpa. All right, so thank you all for joining. I'm Oliver Gomes, VP of Enterprise and Data Platform. I am from Fox, for those who are not familiar with Fox. Just a little bit of our brands out there. So we've got the News Media Group, the top rated news channel, Fox Sports, everything from the NFL to MLB, Tubi, our AVOD platform, Fox Entertainment with all those amazing shows like The Simpsons, and our Fox local TV station. So we are the enterprise data platform team for all of Fox and parts of Tubi. As you can imagine, one of the biggest broadcasters and leading media companies, we get a lot of data, a lot of users, which automatically means what are we doing with all this data and how are we actually helping the business is a critical part of what we try to solve for every day. But what I'm here to talk about is to what Prukalpa alluded, is how we thought about the problem statement, went about it and our journey, and then where we are right now. So that's kind of what I'm going to walk you through. When we started, or when I started basically 3 years back, obviously there were a lot of data teams and a lot of things happening within Fox. What was important was these data teams were solving business needs. However, what we saw was the siloed nature of how that data was being received by the business. So when we took a step back, we said, let's define some core principles of how we actually do this going forward, given that the marketplace was changing a lot. And these were kind of the core beliefs we settled on. The first one is being interoperable, choosing the best tools and technologies for the workload. We did not want to be all in on one technology, one platform. We said, let's choose the right technology for the right use case at the right time. At the same time, we wanted to look at it in how would it scale in the long run. We wanted to future-proof this business, right? And you'll see me talk a lot about this. So at different points, we said, how can we abstract a lot of our decisions? So if the market or changed or the landscape changed, we would be ready to accommodate those changes. And then the last one, I've said it before, outcomes focus, which means when we were talking to the business, previously a lot of our discussions spoke about technologies like what are we doing with Redshift and what are we doing with this tool or that tool. And the business was inundated with a lot of tech jargon, which we wanted to move away from and said, what are you looking for? What is the outcome you're looking for? And we'll figure out the technology in a way that abstracts them from all of those kind of nuances that they wouldn't be familiar about. So taking those principles 3 years back and then we kind of moved through our journey, these are the 3 waves that we've seen happen, and we're kind of in this 3rd wave. I'll quickly walk through the first 2, which was all of this data was available, great, but the business did not know about this data. They did not know how to make sense of this data. And that is what leads us to kind of the first one, which was we needed to focus on discoverability. The data was there, it helped the business, but it really wasn't in a way that they understood or could search for it or even know what to ask for. And that's when I met Prukalpa and we started talking about the evolution of what is now the data catalog. All of us talk about it in the same way, but the data catalog at the endpoints where the user is, whether it's the BI tool, a lightweight approach to bringing something on top of your data that allows for discoverability. So if you think of discoverability, the problem statement, I'm pretty sure if you were to read a little bit about this, is generally common for all of us. Where is the data? I'm not sure what this data even means. Is this data reliable? Is the quality right? So I see some tables. Someone's told me I get a report from this table. Is that valid? Is that valid for my use case? What is missing is information about the data. And that is truly where the business was. Again, this is a slide I'm sure will resonate with many of you. You have a lot of people asking for data, and then they either go out and get the data, or they work with someone to get their answers solved. But what you see in this is kind of a fragmented approach to how data is discovered. So in our approach to make this much more seamless, we said, why not organize data in a way that is discoverable? And we took on the approach of building domains. A very familiar thing in the marketplace was the data mesh architecture, which is kind of what we did. We took the data, we built domains, which is nothing but subject areas about this data. We kind of catalog them. From that point, we said we need to make this accessible. And we're at a Databricks conference. We all know about the medallion architecture. We made a lot of this data available across those 3 levels of the medallion architecture. Great. From a data technology point of view, we had done a lot of these things. But what was missing? How do you make all of that available to the business in a discoverable format? And that's where our partnership with Atlan really helped unlock that, right? So that kind of took us to phase 1, where he said, people now know about the data, they know how to get to it, and they have a landing point. But that was not all. We then wanted to move to the part of it, which is, how do we build an architecture that eventually is future-proof? And when we started looking under the hood, it was important that we had the concept of the metadata plane, right? So I will talk to you a little bit about the metadata plane and how we see it. But kind of going forward, we said this data was discoverable. What we noticed was Atlan as a data catalog also evolved as a product. So it was one thing about the glossary, but it started becoming a semantic layer. It started having lineage. It started having governance within it. And that's where we saw the future. A layer that we can now control a lot of things about our data, which is the metadata plane. And that was what subsequently, I think, Prukalpa, the product evolved to becoming the kind of the leader in the metadata plane. And to show you a little bit of how we thought of the world, this is our tech stack today. And you can see at the bottom, we have Atlan kind of really playing the metadata plane across our tech stack. Independent of where the technology is, we have one place to define the data, to understand what it means, to understand where it comes from. Similarly, we've taken the same approach when it came to building out our transformation. We abstracted all of that into dbt. So it didn't matter if we were running on GCP, we were running on Redshift, or even Snowflake or Databricks. We wanted to abstract that code that allowed us to be future-proof. And then one of the bigger steps we had taken, and kudos to members of my team in the audience here, is we moved to Iceberg. 2 years back, we saw the writing on the wall that this is where the industry is moving to, and we wanted to be in an open table format and really push the industry in that place. So I'm happy to say that today we are very much knee deep into Iceberg and we see the industry moving there. Okay. So at every point when we made those decisions, it was with the idea of how do we future-proof it, abstract a lot of that complexity from the business, and really take us to the next stage. But all that is great, and then that leads us to where we are today, which is the next frontier, AI. And I'm happy to say that when I look back, a lot of the decisions we made actually help us. Because we've governed data, we've put a metadata plane, we have all that context. But as we've gone through it, and I can share a little bit, we've used Atlan AI, right? So we've already got some AI capabilities to enrich our metadata through Atlan. We've enriched our catalogs, and we will soon be putting out a bot on top of this where you can now converse with the data. And then we will launch a lot more data products, which is, again, features of Atlan. But where I'm going with this is, in some sense, as much as AI is available and helping us bridge those gaps, I don't think it's completely yet ready for the enterprise need. And this leads us to that third phase of how do we overcome those challenges? And I'd love to bring up Prukalpa on stage. As we partner through this, would love to get your thoughts on how you are seeing the industry, especially given that you are in the metadata area. Yeah. You sit on all that context. Yeah.
So over the last year or so, something we've been doing at Atlan, our roots is that we started as a data team ourselves. The reason we've been able to build what we've built is because we just knew these problems intimately and deeply. I was a data leader. I tried to buy a data catalog 3 times over, failed 3 times over with an implementation, and I think that led to the trying to understand what it takes to make these projects successful. And over the last year, we've been at this new kind of frontier as an ecosystem, right? Everyone's talking about AI. Who's heard the word AI more than 5 times since this morning? Right? Everyone's talking about AI. But every time I go talk to a leader and I say, oh great, did this go into production? What's in production? And suddenly eyes drop, there's a little bit of silence and people go oh, we had this problem, we're working on it. And we've been trying to figure out what's going on. And I don't think we're anywhere close to being AI native today. I think the best that most companies are today is some version of AI curious. We have some co-pilots. We have some initial experiments that are starting to work. And becoming AI native is proving to be really, really hard. Last year, only 1 out of 4 AI experiments went into production. 46% of AI experiments are completely abandoned, the budget goes away. And so we've been trying to figure out what's going on. There's so much excitement, there's so much energy, there's more capital being invested in this than ever before. What's going wrong? And the best quote I heard from somebody was a CIO who told me, the things that we thought would be hard, the models, the LLMs, that stuff was actually easy. And the things that we thought would be easy, this was data, this was our business context, that was really hard. At Atlan, we're starting to think about this as a sort of this chasm. On the left side, you have a ton of AI experiments, and on the right side, you have AI in production. And in the middle, we're all trying to jump, and then we somehow fall off. What's causing the chasm? I spoke to a CDO the other day who told me we have 1,000 AI use cases in our roadmap, but I don't even know where to start because I don't even know where my data is. CIO at an investment management firm. TAM might mean 100 things on the open internet, but when someone says TAM in our company, it means total addressable market. AI is like this super smart alien, right? Like it doesn't know anything about your world, and you have to very explicitly teach it about your world. Otherwise it guesses, and it guesses extremely confidently. This is the third one. I'm okay with the HR chatbot using my payroll data, but I don't want anything else, any other use case to touch my payroll data. Sounds really simple, but really hard to do in production. How can I be sure? This is what we think of as the 3 hurdles between the left to the right. Data, meaning, and governance. In 1996, when internet was just starting to become a thing, Bill Gates put out a blog post and he said, content will be king. We believe in this AI world, context will be king. Everywhere you look, like it's the model context protocol, it's the context windows, like the ability to teach AI very explicitly the context of our businesses is what's going to help us get to through this next frontier. And that brings us to how we're thinking about this problem at Atlan. We think of it as almost 3 layers. The first, how do you unify? How do you create context across your entire enterprises? Most of our customers have fragmented data landscapes. They have fragmented AI landscapes. This fragmentation, someone was telling me, is not going to go down. It's only going to go up. And so the first step, how do you connect into this entire landscape? How do you bring together that one unified graph of context across your organization? The second step, collaborate. This for us is maybe the hardest problem that we as a data industry have to solve over the next 5 years. A lot of context lives in these human brains, like the human LLMs that exist inside the enterprise. And how do we help? And the interesting thing about this is it's also not just in one place, it's across lots of diverse people, right? Technical context lives in the heads of data engineering teams. Semantic and business context lives in the head of business teams. Governance, legal teams, like principles, like we as humankind have to decide what our principles of governance are going to be, right? So you're talking about, at least 30, 40, 50 personas that need to come together to create this context. And so here is where we think a lot about how do we bring this into the core workflows of how teams operate. So we think a lot about this data and AI product lifecycle. So how can you incorporate shipping with context and meaning as a part of how data engineers ship? How do you bring into the workflows of where your business users are? If they're already talking in Slack or Teams, how do we bring it into that workflow so that they are creating more context as a part of what they do? And so that's really the second layer. And the third layer is activating this. As we think about activation, the thing that we think a lot about is we believe the interfaces of this is going to change dramatically. Today, your data consumers are still humans. Tomorrow, your data consumers are going to become AI agents. How do you build for this world where AI is going to increasingly do more and more of what humans would do otherwise? In fact, I was talking to a data team the other day, and they were talking about the concept of an AI data engineer. If you give enough context to AI, will it write a pipeline? And if it does write a pipeline, what does that change about everything that we know in our ecosystem? But how do you give it context? So this is, I think, the thing that we've been working the most about. We were the first company to bring in an AI copilot 2 years ago, and we actually pulled it back. It was the only product investment that we made at Atlan that we pulled back. And the reason for that was because we realized that the demos were beautiful. The demos were so slick. But when we did this in production across millions of assets, it failed. And so we realized that you could not just slap on AI on existing infrastructure and architecture and expect it to work. You needed to go back and rethink the foundation. And here's what we learned. Metadata architecture was fundamentally not built for the AI world. In the AI world, metadata workloads are exploding. they're actually becoming just like big data workloads, right? Like they need to be highly performant, they need to be real time, they need to be scalable. Second, innovation is going, like if you see across our customers, I'm sure across this room, no one has standardized on an interface. Nobody has an answer to this is how we are going to think about like where we deploy our AI agents. And there's no interface. In the analytics world, SQL became that interface. In the AI world, that doesn't exist. And so then how do you make sure that whatever innovation is going to come in the next 5 or 6 years, we have open interoperable metadata through all of those standards? The third, trust. Trust is this big problem that we all talk about. But let's talk about, let's say, AI governance. If you're not able to time travel through metadata, you cannot do AI governance. So now metadata needs versioning. Metadata needs time traveling. And finally, like metadata itself is becoming big data. So in that world, how do you think about metadata architecture? Now the best thing about this, we have just gone through this problem in the data world. Like everything that I just talked about, I'm sure if you think about the eras of data lake, data warehouse, data lakehouse, we have just tried to solve all of these problems in the data world. And so today, really excited to announce the world's first, hopefully, metadata lakehouse. This is fundamentally built on Iceberg. So it's an Iceberg-ready metadata store. It's fundamentally open, extensible, version control. It is built for decentralized compute. So whatever compute investments our customers have already made in for example, Databricks, they can directly leverage that. On top of that, we have a metadata intelligence layer with both Atlan managed models as well as customer managed models, so you can bring your own models. It's built fundamentally for vector store. It's built for like conversational search. And then on top of that, this is where we're most excited by. We're making a lot of investments into all of the interfaces that we would need both today and into the future. So we launched our MCP server last month. We have an app framework. We have an orchestration engine. The intent is wherever your AI lives, we should be able to power this context bridge as a part of that. And
so Prukalpa, I'd love to ask you a question. Like, I see the vision, I see where you're going, and you pointed out in those three things, data, context, and meaning. I think all of us from the enterprise world will say context is one of those tougher problems to solve. Yeah. Given Atlan sits right on top of all of that metadata, yeah, what would Atlan do to help build better context?
Yeah.
How do you see the kind of product evolve from that point of view?
Yeah. So as we think about that data and AI product lifecycle, today I think we're still operating in a world where humans ask AI for help. So for example, we have this Atlan AI. Atlan AI sits in the workflows of data engineers. It sits in the workflows of business. And it sits in the workflows of policy. So if you're writing a policy and you're a governance person, it'll like recommend things. We believe that there is a world where AI will ask humans for help. So if you think of what's happening, let's say with Waymo right now, actually, like great parallels I always look at in the consumer world, right? Like when a Waymo gets stuck, it goes to a human team that basically takes control of the car. And so we believe that there's a world where that we could move to that. So the first investment that we're looking to make is what is the AI plus human collaboration layer? At what point can that fit in? So that's one layer investment. The second investment is what Atlan's, like our core DNA, we were a data team. We believe that collaboration is one of the hardest problems to solve because there's so much diversity. Data engineer is so fundamentally different than a business user, right? Like they just think differently, they work differently. And so the second thing that we're investing in is what is the collaboration interfaces for these diverse people to come together and actually collaborate.
So you see the metadata plane essentially as a workflow management where the AI is asking for help, or the business use. Yes. So you see the metadata plane really kind of playing in that space right now.
Yes.
Okay, that's an interesting move in the industry, and we'd be happy to see how that plays out in partnering with you. But then just taking that one step, governance, right? You spoke about that.
Yeah.
Do you see kind of, obviously Atlan, but the metadata plane also now incorporating governance as a core part of its value proposition?
Yeah. Yeah. So what we've seen our customers do is say, and I think the first question is like, what is governance?
Yeah.
Because it means lots of different things in the industry. But I think what we're starting to see our customers say is, if you think about your metadata and you think about having your entire plane in one place, ideally this is where you want to be able to say, okay, what's my policy? How do I connect it to my data ecosystem and my data estate? One of the biggest challenges with governance has been applied as an afterthought.
Yep.
And it was okay to apply governance as an afterthought in a world where we were dealing with 300 reports that we needed to govern. But in this new world, AI needs you to govern data in real time for an action, which is literally a chat, like every single conversation that an end user is having. So that world needs you to almost make governance embedded and governance invisible. And that's really where we're seeing the metadata plane come into play, where you can create your policy, you can connect it to your data ecosystem and tags, and then you apply it. You apply it at every single one. And that's where our partnerships come alive. So for example, with Databricks, we have a two-way tag sync. So where our customers work with us is, they set policy on Atlan, they create their tags, they map it across their entire ecosystem. So we have end-to-end lineage. And then we push it back into a Databricks, where, so if you're executing a query on Databricks, it's live. But if you're also executing it in a AI ecosystem or model that you're experimenting with, it's there. If you're in a BI tool, it's there. So that's kind of the direction that we're seeing.
And then maybe a question, as I see a lot of engineers and architects also over here. What is this role of managing a catalog? Is it an engineer's role? Is like where do you see kind of this sit within the industry, right? Because I can tell you within my group, it kind of floats around. Everyone participates in it.
Yeah.
But this might start needing a lot more oversight and focus.
Yeah. So we're starting to see the emergence of these, and in fact, we did a research project on this last year. We called it the Data Governance Genome Project, and we actually mapped across all our customers the programs, the process, the team on what it takes to make programs like this successful. And we found some really interesting things. We found that the teams that had two kinds of skill sets were the most successful. The first was a pure engineering skill set. So we're seeing the emergence of roles like data governance engineers. And so the pure engineering skill set was one. The other was this skill set that I like to call enablement, change management. The best example of this was in one of our customers. It was someone who had worked in a data team and then worked in a design team, so understood user research, but was a children's librarian for a couple of years. And so she knew how to bring people together. The core thing about governance in the new world is it sits at the intersection of humans and technology. And if you cannot make humans and technology work together to make this happen, typically these implementations will fail. So that's what we're starting to see.
I'm glad you said it, because we actually have a team called Analytics Enablement, which is where the catalog kind of oversight sits. So we're seeing that, and the person leading it comes from a product background, so that is helping people think about the user experiences. But yeah, I mean, surely, definitely not scripted. This was
it's like totally, and the most interesting thing, actually, I have a question to everyone. What we found was the most successful parameter. Like we study everything. So we were like, okay, these successful teams, we look at their LinkedIn profiles, we did like titles, we did everything. And we found that the best indicator of successful teams was people who have tenure of more than 2 years in a company. It actually didn't matter if they'd done governance before. It didn't matter what background they came from. And so I was like, wow. And now you think about it and you realize that these people already have tribal knowledge and they already have organizational context and they have credibility. And so we found that the most successful indicator of teams was the tenure of the people who had worked in the teams. It was, So there was one team where actually our data governance team was analysts. They had never done any of this before, but they were super successful just because they knew who to work with in the enterprise.
That's great insight. I know we're coming up on time, but any closing things or questions, I guess, from the audience?
We'd love to open it up to questions. If not, thank you
all
for joining us.